So, you want to learn how to code, huh? Well, you came to the right place. This video will be a great first stop for anyone who's interested in learning how to code, or maybe already got their toes wet. So whether you're a complete newbie, taking a computer science class in school, or want to explore or transition to a job in tech, this video is perfect for you. Here are the main topics we'll cover in this video. First, we'll go over what coding is, how it is used, and why you should learn it. Then, I will give you a brief introduction into programming languages. We will then go into the main core concepts of coding. So to start, what is coding? The simple answer is, coding is the process of writing instructions that tell a computer what to do. You might think of code as that long page of brightly colored gibberish you see on those stock photos, but don't let that overwhelm you. Code is everywhere. It's what controls how websites look, it's what powers your favorite apps, and it's even what lets your computer or phone work at all. So in order for all these things to work, someone has to write the code. Learning how to code is a great idea, not only if you want to get a job specific to writing code. You can use code to create a custom personal website, make a website for a company, automate boring tasks in your life, and learning how to code can help you get any tech job. Not to mention, diving into coding will help expand your mind in the world of technology, and the experience of creating something with code, although frustrating at times, can be an extremely rewarding experience. Now, you still want to learn to code? Great, let's get started. We will first look at the programming languages. Yes, languages. Just like English, Spanish, computers can take different type of input and understand it. But what language does the computer know? Well, computers only understand binary, also known as machine code. Binary is just ones and zeros, on or off. Think about it like a series of light bulbs. Depending on if the light bulb is on or off, that dictates what the data means. How do computers understand this? Doesn't really matter for the scope of this video. And if you are completely lost, don't sweat it. All you need to know is that the way that computers actually understand information looks like complete nonsense to a human eye. So what do? Well, what we do is we write the instructions in a way that we can understand, and then translate that to the computer. Now that is a little bit of an overhead view of programming, but it is important to at least have that base level of knowledge of how computers work. Now notice how I said we write the instructions in a way that we can understand. A programming language is the specific way in which we write our instructions, or code. Each programming language is best suited for different types of tasks. For example, here are some of the most popular programming languages that you will come across and what their purpose is. HTML defines web page structure. JavaScript adds interactivity to web pages such as buttons, so on. Python is a versatile and beginner-friendly language. Java powers enterprise-level systems, and C++ is for performance-heavy applications. Now there are many more languages all for different purposes, but don't let that overwhelm you. You can learn about them as you go. Now the next natural question is, what should I learn first? Now, different people have different answers to this question, but the most common answer, as well as mine personally, is Python. Why? Because it's easy to learn and it is very versatile. That is important because if you get bored of doing one thing with Python, you can switch to creating something entirely different. For example, maybe at the start you want to create a desktop application, but after a while, you decide you want to make a website, or maybe even want to get into data science. Knowing Python can be incredibly useful for any of those scenarios. Now it's time to get our hands dirty. We've been talking about the concept of programming, but now we're going to get into the concepts within programming. These are the basic building blocks of programming that you will need to understand in order to understand any program or programming language. That means we're going to have to start looking at code. Scary, I know. For the purpose of this video, I will be showing you examples in Python, but keep in mind these concepts go for almost any other programming language. So what are the concepts? Well, in my opinion, the three most important concepts to understand in programming are variables, functions, and loops. Do not worry, I will explain each of these. Variables. You may know variables from math class, and they work very similar in programming. A variable is a placeholder or representation of a value. Let's say our program needs to use the number 800 multiple times. Instead of typing 800 every time, we will create or initialize a variable called x, and then set the value to 800. Now, whenever we use x in our program, it is the exact same as if we typed 800. You can also change or update a variable to a new value. The two main parts of a variable is the variable name, which is what you call the variable, and there is the value, which is the specific data that the variable name actually represents. A function is a collection of lines of code that can be reused from one single line of code. A function is like a recipe. You define the steps once, creating the function, and then you can follow that recipe anytime by calling the function. There are two main parts of using functions. There is creating the function, also known as setting, declaring, or defining. This is where you write what you actually want the function to do. And then there's calling the function, which is when you actually execute the code in your program. Functions are very common in coding, and it is important for you to understand what they are and what they do. Loops. A loop is pretty self-explanatory. It is when you loop through or repeat one or more lines of code. There's a little more to that though, because you have to understand how many times the code will run. There are different kinds of loops for different purposes, but those can be a bit more language specific, so for the purpose of this video, just understand that a loop is one or more lines of code that repeats. The two main parts of a loop is the condition, which defines whether the loop should continue or stop, and the body, which is the code that will actually be repeated. So now that you know the main concepts of programming, you can apply these concepts to any language and learn what these concepts look like in each language. The word for the specific grammar or the way a programming language is formatted or looks is called the syntax. Think of it to programming as grammar or spelling is to a normal language like English. So now you've heard about and hopefully understand the three main concepts of programming and are ready to start learning more. But what should you do next? I believe your next step should be to pick up a programming language and learn the fundamentals of it. Not only what variables, functions, and loops are, but how they are written in your programming language. If you picked Python, then you have just had a good look at how they are written. But if you like my style of videos, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as well leave a comment on this video if you want to see a Python for Beginners course or any other topic related to programming as well as cybersecurity. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Goodbye.